Abracadabra. Magic has become a huge and important element in video games. I'm Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, here's 10 games with the best magic systems. Number 10, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep Command Melding. Now, command melding wasn't exclusively magic, but when magic entered the mix, that's when it was fun. You could take various attack commands, various magic commands, combine them together, and although the very first way you might describe the thing that comes out isn't necessarily quote-unquote a magic trick, it's pretty easy to start thinking about it that way when you realize that it's the only Kingdom Hearts game that lets you do this. And it provides such flexibility and depth in gameplay, it just totally opens up your entire move set and gives you some leeway to use creativity to create more devastating and therefore more useful attacks. Now, it's not the only system of its kind, it's not even the only system of its kind on this list, but Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep accomplished something really detailed and intricate and interesting. One might call it magic. Number 9, Black and White had a really tricky and interesting way of having you make magic. You see, instead of selecting it from a menu, you could have access to all the leashes and miracles and magic in the game through the use of gestures. To do a gesture, you would draw something with the mouse, and if it was done correctly, this really cool sort of explosion of light happens out of your drawing, and the miracle or leash happens. Now, you could do it in combat, you could do it outside combat, and it was a really satisfying way of doing it. It gave you a new thing to memorize, and it created an element of the game that felt more like real magic. It felt like the mouse was your wand, and you were actually performing magic tricks. Number 8 is Okami, which features another drawing mechanic, but before I actually go into detail, I have to acknowledge what Okami looks like. The game goes out of its way to characterize itself as a drawing and has specific story reasons that this is why you draw with a celestial brush with various different techniques to invoke various interesting effects upon the world. For instance, if you drew a circle around a plant, you could restore cursed plants or hurt plant-based enemies. You could draw a circle in the sky and it would prolong daytime. You could connect two objects with a U and it would act as a magnet in between them. And because this game came out on Wii, you just used the controller to draw it on the screen. Each ability had a celestial brush god that governed the ability that was associated with it. They represent the 12 members of the East Asia Zodiac plus the cat, and these abilities are deeply ingrained in the story and culture of the game. Number 7 is Dragon's Dogma. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about with Dragon's Dogma. The spells in Dragon's Dogma are basically natural disasters that you just call on. They're like the animations in Bayonetta, except you control them. You just set them loose on people. The way you target them and cast them is very cool, but it's really the end result. You want to literally just start a tornado that rips an enemy to shreds? Yeah, go ahead and do it. It looks as epic as it should, too. The spells are so ridiculous and powerful, it felt awesome controlling that kind of ridiculous force within a world, and it also looked cool as hell. Number 6 is the game Sacrifice. Like the entirety of the game, it's an RTS based fully around magic, and it does have some action elements, but the type of game it is really isn't why I'm talking about it. Certainly, you know from the fact that it's an RTS that there's a lot of depth, but as you engage in an all-out magic war, the way you defeat your opponent was by sacrificing one of your friendly units on their altar, thusly desecrating it. Regarding how games deal with magic, as well as how they deal with objectives and goals and win conditions, it's just a game that really pulls everything together in a cool way. Number 5 is the gesture system from Arx Fatalis, which even though the game itself is fundamentally different from Black and White, kind of built on some of the best elements of the Black and White gesture system. Again, you would draw runes using the mouse, and they would cast different spells. Now, it wasn't just that it was a gesture system, because that's certainly not unique to the game. It was that the spells themselves were creative. And on top of that, they helped lay the groundwork for Arcane Studios' releases in the future, one of which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Number 4, Magicka 2's incredibly interesting way of combining spells. It assigns all the spells to different keys on the keyboard and you use different combinations instead of crafting in sort of real-time experimenting, creating different combinations of spells literally. It's such a cool way of accomplishing combining spells. Not to say that crafting spells isn't interesting, but it's so real-time. The first time you press a couple of keys together and a big fireball engulfs you and just kills everything around you, you're like, oh, I need to write that down. It seems so simple, but it's only possible on a keyboard with a lot of different buttons, and it's really just cool as hell. Number 3, The Elder Scrolls Morrowind had an incredibly robust spell creation system. it felt like the mouse was your wand, and you were some kind of benevolent wizard performing magic, in which you had to collect different spell effects from around the world, things that had categorically different effects. And you could just spend your time combining these things and making these bizarre effects, and there's such a large number of them that the amount of combinations is frankly really high. Now, that didn't mean they were all powerful or anything, but you could really come up with some interesting stuff if you had some time. Number 2 is the spell system in Dishonored 2, which is frankly honed from the near-perfect, endlessly entertaining combination system that was designed for the first Dishonored. Now, you don't literally combine spells as you do in many of these other games. It's not a crafting situation, it's a figure out ways to cause the effects to overlap situation. Now, effects could range from using time warping and blinking around stabbing people, to planting a decoy at the bottom of a very long fall to slice the neck of and, well, not get hurt. Dishonored 2 is just masterful game design, and its spell system is just a joy to experiment within. To call the stuff that happens in this game magic it's an understatement. And finally, number 1, those concepts are taken to another level in Divinity Original Sin. Now, I'm not going to make any assertions as to which game is more fun or better or anything like that, but a lot of those same spell casting concepts and environmental interaction that we saw in Dishonored, particularly in Dishonored 2, is also on display in Divinity Original Sin, except they go way further with the environmental interaction. And obviously it's not the exact same kind of game, there's a lot of different mechanics to it, particularly the perspective you experience everything in the game from, and the fact that one is a real-time first-person experience and the other is a turn-based RPG. Still, oddly enough, they really intersect in the ideas. Frankly, I think if you bring up one, you need to bring up the other, because it's the same kind of thing presented and executed in a totally different way. It's also no coincidence that 1 and 2 on this list are some of my favorite games of all time, certainly of the last decade. And yeah, when it comes down to it, magic looks really cool and it's just plain fun. But ultimately, these games revolve around magic and make so much use of it that we're really kind of delving into a topic that could get deeper and deeper and deeper. What's your favorite quote-unquote magic trick from a game, whether it be a system or a specific spell? Leave it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, and if you are not subscribed, please do that as well. The best way to see new videos, which we upload every single day, is a subscription. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.